We're back. This is the Mortgage and Real Estate Podcast. I'm Chris Giannino. What's going on, Pete? How are you today?
Hey, Chris. Good to be here. Today, we are in a new location for us. Well, us, the collective us.
Yes.
But we are actually in my law office, Riezman Berger, in downtown Clayton on Bottom Avenue. We are on the 7th floor, overlooking a number of these nice Clayton buildings.
This place is nice.
Thanks, man.
Great view, great location.
So sometimes we've touched on this topic, but spend some of my time with Pinnacle Home Loans and some of my time with Riezman Berger. So it's been a good synergy, and been able to collaborate using some of the skills in each place to do my legal work, to do my mortgage work. And so glad and proud to have my brother joining us today. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. You guys got a great spot. You go Capitol Grill often, or what?
Not often enough, for sure. It's right across the street, though. Dangerous location, just like the proximity of some of our fine establishments on the hill. Yes.
Yeah. That place does very well.
Yeah. I like a lot what they have to offer, but if you like it too much, you'll go broke, So I stick to bringing my lunch around here sometimes. But so today, very proud and pleased to have a special guest from my firm. You'll recognize his name because it is part of the name of the firm. And so we have Fred Berger with us today. Fred, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. It's great to be here. Getting a kick out of it.
Fred, you are looking dapper today as usual. Tell me a little bit, about your clothing selection, your dedication to style. But you got some cufflinks, even you're styling today. What's up with the cufflinks?
Well, the cufflinks, actually, my father my mom and dad gave them to me for my 40th birthday.
No kidding. So that was a couple years ago, huh?
Yeah, a few decades ago. That's right. Yeah.
So that's a special gift for sure. Well, Fred, it's obvious you must be an important guy here because your name's on the door. But tell us a little bit about your background in law and what you're doing here at this place.
Well, don't let the name on the door fool you. I feel like I'm the janitor most of the time.
Well, you're doing a hell of a job then.
Yeah, this place is sparkling clean.
Yeah, well, we have a good cleaning service. I sort of went in a direction of law as something I wanted to do as a result of working as a campaign coordinator for Senator Stuart Simonton in University of Missouri. And during that process, I interacted with a lot of lawyers, and I listened to what they said, how they said it. I said, this is for me. I love the analysis. I love the way they're presented. And I said, this is what I want to do. So I spent the rest of my collegiate career trying to correct what I'd done the first 2 years.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it sounds
like that's a different type of learning.
It is.
You have to do that too.
That's right.
Yeah, well, some people realize it, some people don't.
That's right.
But
where did you go to university? Undergrad?
Undergrad. Long story short, I graduated from George Washington University. I went to school at night, and I worked in the Senate during the day.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an unusual path. How did you were you a St. Louis guy, or how did you end up there?
I was a St. Louis guy, and I was at University of Missouri, Columbia, and I got to know Betty McCaskill, who's Claire McCaskill's mother, who passed away, and her husband, Bill, at the time, who was director of insurance under Hearns. And I was at a rally one day protesting the Vietnam War, saw some of my friends get arrested and pulled off, and I decided, well, this really isn't for me, going to jail. And so I looked for other things you could do to protest the Vietnam War, which I was not in favor of. And one of the flyers said, work for Senator Simonton. So I called him up, and I started at the bottom, and I put my all into it and rose to sort of run the student campaign for Simonton. And afterwards, I asked for a job. And he said, okay. So I moved lock, stock, and barrel to Washington, D.C., and I applied to George Washington University and got in. And long story short, here I am.
Wow. So you were doing that initial work in Columbia, and for the senator, and then that's when you applied for the job in D.C.
Yes, after we won.
Yeah, that's a good time to do it.
But I will tell you one thing about Senator Simonton. He is he's one of the few senators that stood up to Joe McCarthy in the McCarthy era, where he was trying to get everybody for being a communist. And Senator Simonton was the type of guy, he was independently wealthy, he was respected, and he just took him on single-handed and said, you're not going to get away with this, not right here and now. He was picking on a secretary for being communist.
No kidding.
And Simonton wouldn't put up with it.
Oh, my. Wow.
Yeah, very cool.
And what were you doing then in D.C. when you went there?
Well, I was working on a staff during the day, and I went to school at night. And I would note that I was there. I would ride by Watergate Apartments every day, every night on my way to school and back, which is where it happened.
Yeah.
But I worked on a staff, and so we did the lower-end support work that supports the whole office of probably 50, 60 people. And you could say I was a reader, because I would read everything in Missouri with respect to what was going on that might relate to senators' interests. And I was a reader. I read every newspaper, every article, anything. There was 2 or 3 of us, and that's all we did was read. And we'd take people on a tour or do favors for constituents who were in town who needed a flag run up the pole. That was a big thing, getting a flag run up the pole that goes all day long. Run it up, run it down, and it's been flown over the Capitol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a whole operation.
As a kid, did you have pursuits or ambition to be working in politics, or did that come upon you by just circumstance?
Well, we talked earlier. I was a political science major, just as an interest. Wasn't really something that was going to get me a job
Right.
as I got out of law school. But it was just being involved in the campaign, and when you're involved in the campaign, you get involved with the issues, you start to understand the speak and what's going on, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And being in Washington, D.C. at a young age is sort of a little bit heady, because it's to you, it's a center. To me, it's the center of the world, and the information flows like you've never seen information flow in your life, and it was exhilarating.
Yeah, and somebody who likes to read so much, I mean, that's when you have all that knowledge, you gain a lot of confidence when it comes to speaking on those issues, And then after you graduated and started that, I read that you took a sabbatical for a year. I mean, like Pete said, with your childhood, I mean, you had a lot of curiosity for the world, probably for just some type of also just adventure to an extent. I mean, not only travel around the world, but I read that you basically hitchhiked around the world, which is some people will go to Europe or backpack and those type of things, which is a great thing to do before you have to go into the quote unquote real world. But what led you to that decision?
Well, the truth be told, I didn't get in law school the first year. And so I had a year. I wanted to try it again before I gave up and tried something else. So I applied for law school, and I took off. And I figured that this is a time in my life where I didn't have any obligations. I was carefree. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a job. And I'd saved up money working in D.C., and I left the country with $1,000 in my pocket. And I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to, as I got further into my trip, I wanted to experience it on the level, the lowest one could live, like an impoverished person, because I wanted to see what it was like. And that's what I did.
Where'd you go?
Started out in London and worked my way, took the boat over to France, and then hitchhiked through France. And the interesting part about that is that as you go into southern France, you get into the Basque country. And I'm sure you've read about the Basque separatist movement and all that going on in France. But it's really interesting to actually see the culture change as you go further south. And you see the Basque region, which is interesting. Anyway, went through there in Spain, and I was telling somebody the other day, our meals when we went out were $1.50, and for $1.50 you got a quarter chicken or a piece of fish, a potato, a roll, and either a bottle of water or a bottle of wine.
Wow.
How great can that be?
Can we go back to that? Speaking of Capitol Grill.
So, and then you just met people along the way, made friends, hitchhiked to where the next destination that you wanted to go to, and just kind of embraced and engulfed yourself into those cultures.
Right. And there were times where you would meet people along the way, and you hook up with them and travel, and as far as it's mutually convenient. There was time everybody has different paths to lead. But I remember there were times where we were sitting for hours waiting for a ride, and we would have taken a ride anywhere. I don't care if it's a ride going back to where we came from or a ride going forward.
Just that type of
we just
mindset.
wanted a ride, yeah.
Yeah, can we get a ride? Well, what did your dad do for a living growing up?
My father was at the time working for a family business, and I really wonder as to how they could let me go and do that. I mean, they were just in, when you grew up in the 50s, it's, parenthood and parenting was a little bit, I think, different than it is today. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
But I would say that my son followed my path, and when he got out of college, I told him to take a year off and go around the world, and he did it. And it worked out well for him.
Is there anything about that experience other than the memories that you reflect on today that has influenced the last 40 years of your life?
Yes, I could tell you that this. We have a lot of problems in this country, and I hope we can address them and solve them. But notwithstanding those problems, what I saw in my travels was this is the greatest country in the world. There's no better country than the United States of America. We have problems. We've done things that weren't right, and we made our share of mistakes. But I swear, when I got off the plane, I got on my hands and knees and kissed the ground. I was so happy to be back. Mm-hmm. It's a great country, and I saw fantastic countries as well around the world.
Right.
And I met people from different countries and got to know them and got to know their culture, and it was fascinating.
It's really amazing because, we talked to Anna the other day on the podcast, and, her family came from Sicily, and you were traveling all over Europe, and these are places that, we all long to go, and we really liked our lifestyles, and but at the end of the day, America is just a place that people are drawn to. I mean, when you can come over here with nothing and then start a business and a family and be successful and prosperous, people see that, and it's attractive to a lot of people. So just all the history and the culture and of all of these places. I mean, really, the United States is a blend of all of that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But it's amazing that it's to this day, America is still the place to be, with all of its problems.
It is. And as an aside, one of the things I got involved with was the International Institute for about 10 or 15 years, which is helping people from war-torn countries come to resettle in the United States and provide resettlement services. It's a fantastic organization, and I enjoyed everything I did there. We did microloans and all this or that. I had no intention to bring this up, but the subject-wise, it seemed to be appropriate to throw that in there as we talk about different cultures and how they come to the United States and immigrate and to some degree assimilate.
Yeah, I've done some work with that organization as well, and share that feeling about that International Institute. Great organization. Chris, you kind of touched on it in a lot of these podcasts. One of the themes that continues to come up and from all different angles, but is gratitude. And you probably have some gratitude for the opportunity to have gone over there, and then of course, like you said, the opportunity to return and live here. And
yes.
And now look at you. You're you got this successful, lengthy law practice. we have, I don't know, how many people do we have employed here? A lot of people, right?
Over 60.
Over 60 people at this law firm that's over 40 years old, right?
We're going to be 50 years old next July.
50 years old in July. Wow, so. How did we get to this point, from you kissing the ground of America when you returned to now we're sitting on the 7th floor of this building in Clayton? Like, tell us how we got here.
Well, I graduated from Tulane University and came back and was looking for a job. I was on the pavement. And one of my friends told me about Richard Riezman and to contact him. And so I called and about dropping off a resume, and they said, okay. And so I got my wife and my dog in my car and went right up the street and parked on the Central, thinking, all right, I'm going to go get in and just give this to them and close it. I'll be right back. He kept me waiting 2 hours. And I talked to him this morning about it. He doesn't remember at all. But I waited for 2 hours because I wasn't going to leave. And he finally called me in, and he hired me on probation because he didn't want to get charged on your unemployment experience rating. So
spoken like a true attorney.
Right. So he hired me on probation for 2 weeks, and I had nothing else going on. I said, okay. And here I am. 5 decades later, almost.
Wow.
Again, we're with Fred Berger of Riezman Berger, attorney with an emphasis in business practice, real estate acquisition, development, zoning, corporate practice, among many other things. You started here, like you were just telling us that story, in 1976. You became partner 4 years later in 1980, and that's still where you're at today. You have many accolades as an attorney, and possess many leadership skills, clearly just from being able to manage a firm to this size. There's so many other things that you've touched along the way from being an attorney. But as far as your law practice, we had read a little bit about one of your most significant achievements, which was basically a lawsuit against Creve Coeur and Mercy Medical Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, you're fighting the giant on what. There's so much that you got to overcome, and a mindset that you have to approach if you're going to do something like that. What led you to do that? Was it just so clear cut that you're like, I have to do it, or it's such an injustice that I'm going to pursue this?
Well, I think it was a former. I had, you may remember the Suburban Journals used to be a publication and back then in the 80s. And I was getting the paper in the morning, and I was standing in my driveway, and I looked at the journal, and it talked about how Creve Coeur was going to approve an infectious waste incinerator for St. John's Hospital. And I looked up in the sky, and I said to myself, I bet there's only one person in the world who could do something about this, and that's me. Because I'm a lawyer. I may not do it the right way. I may make a mistake here or there, but I could figure something out. I could do something if I really want to do it. So I made the decision, I'm not going to let this go down. It's not right. In the middle of Creve Coeur, which is a pretty densely populated area, they're going to put an infectious waste incinerator? Are you kidding me? And I just couldn't let it happen. So at the time, I was also serving on the board of the Village of Westwood, which I'm now the mayor, decades later. But I convinced the trustees to go ahead and file a lawsuit, and we needed a real live body as a plaintiff. So my wife, I said, honey, would you mind being a plaintiff? And she said, okay.
Heavy as the crown.
If I had a nickel.
So we filed a lawsuit, and at the time, this was unheard of. I mean, at the time, people were just getting used to the leaking gas tanks and some of the RECRA, some of the other Superfund legislation, and to hear this about the air, people weren't ready to hear. And especially Creve Coeur was so tied into St. John's, who was such a major employer and such a growing factor for the city, that they almost had a blank check. And so when I started, everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody in the area thought I was nuts. And I used to get threats. I used to get people calling me up at night and give me threats, and I got it all the time, but I just I don't do well with threats because I go the opposite direction. You know? Some people will turn around. No, not me. If there's a threat, I'm just going to take it head on.
Wow.
And
when was this, Fred, approximately?
I think it was somewhere around in the early 80s.
Okay, and it should be self-explanatory, but what is an infectious waste incinerator?
Well, what it does is it takes all the medical waste from the hospital. Like when you go in, if you get a blood test, you get a syringe, you get other different tests. There's byproducts of those tests. There's sometimes tissue. There's blood. There's all sorts of things that come from running a hospital. It's waste. And so they had done they meaning St. John's, had done an analysis how all the travel time with the trucks to the landfill and all the possibilities for accidents. And they had you know, just like anything else, you could always go with an expert and get a memo made as you instructed, you know.
Yes.
And so they had this memo as to why they needed to do this. And what I was able to do eventually was to hook up with some environmentalists around the state, so I had the resources available, so I could have the science and the data to back it up.
And basically, it was going to. What was the main concern? It was going to get into the waterways and get into the air and everything else?
The main concern was particulate matter, because back then people weren't really attuned to what's called scrubbers. And scrubbers is equipment that's put on a smokestack or a stack that's emitting into the atmosphere. It cleans it, and it cleans out the particulate matter to do as much as possible. We're talking micrometers. I mean, things are so small, but it can get into your lung. And that's when I look back on my career and I say, what did I do that had the biggest impact? It was that. Because what I did is I made the air that much cleaner for everybody who lived in that community. And people were getting lung cancer from the emissions from these incinerators. It's been documented. And so I saved some lives. I've saved some quality. I helped improve quality of lives. And I wasn't looking for thank yous. It's just something I felt had to be done.
Fred, you were a young man then, and a lot has happened in the world since that time. I think that topic, if you almost have to put yourself in that position, because today maybe that's more publicized, and there's a lot of people are going to rise up against something like that. But then in the 80s, there's not a lot of public support or information about that. So you kind of took that a little bit on your own, it sounds like.
Well, I did, and I believe in a multi-pronged approach. So not only did I do it in the courts, but I did it in the court of public opinion, and I did it with the legislators, and I formed a 501c lobbying organization, and I got people who lived around to join me, and we sit there and protest on Saturdays and Sundays, and we had signs, and we walked up and down Ballas Road.
Well, that's when you're doing that's when you get support.
Yeah.
So like, this guy's doing it. He's putting in his time. He's putting in his energy. He's using his tools at his disposal. I mean, it's a big thing. Not only, we're asking questions like, what is that type of incinerator? People don't know what they don't know. And it's very easy to just, overlook that. I got to worry about what I got to worry about. I got to worry about, everybody's got their own day-to-day issues with their families and their wives and their tuition and their every little thing, groceries, that they got to deal with. So it's very easy for most humans to just be like, all right, I'll let somebody else do it. So it's a special breed of person that takes it upon themselves and says, I'll take care of it.
It's too important. Yeah, I got to deal with it.
And you see it all over today. I mean, it's easy to focus on something else and just, all right, well, it's one thing that's good. But without people like you, our world would be in a completely different place.
Yep.
I mean, it takes, many people like you, which they're out there, but the more the better. On a micro level, it's walking by, like Tim Hammett said, if you're walking by your office and you see a paperclip on the floor, you got to pick it up.
That's my mantra. Yeah, exactly right. You've got to be responsible. You've got to be a responsible citizen. And I'll tell you, it was a personal cost. It was a cost to me, my privacy, with my family, and but it's something I felt important. And that's what's going on today. What I did pales in comparison to what's going on today with respect to abortion protests with respect to Ukraine, protests with respect to other problem countries. People are giving their lives, and they're giving their own blood and their own personal costs to protest. It cuts both ways, but protest the First Amendment, it's critical.
Yeah. I think about your reference to the multi-pronged approach and the, one component of that being the court of public opinion. And you hit the streets with that, and I think the real distinction between then and now is the court of public opinion can be tackled now with social media. You didn't even have the foggiest notion of social media back then, or opportunity to use it. And now, we post stuff all over the place, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, and none of that existed to create a groundswell.
Well, media is on steroids right now.
Yeah,
and especially right example is this podcast. You couldn't do this. This technology wasn't there a couple of decades ago.
Yeah,
and you all are putting out good things on the airwaves and letting people participate where they wouldn't have had that chance. And that's all part of technology and part of deregulation, and it's good for society.
Mm-hmm. And we think stories like the one you just told and are frankly, they're inspirational. They're a way for people to, when they're listening to these podcasts or the thousands of other podcasts, there's a way for someone to connect to a story and say, I could do something. Or, maybe that's for me too. Or they can apply it to their own lives. Do you recognize that? How, this is why people like you, your story needs to be told, It's going to connect with someone.
I do recognize it, and that's one of the things I do as the mayor of the Village of Westwood.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Is I deal with those issues, and the Village of Westwood is like a pimple on somebody's rear end. so small.
Yeah.
We have maybe a couple hundred homes and less than 500 people, but it is a city. Mm-hmm. We have reporting requirements. We have requirements with respect to law enforcement. We have requirements with respect to interacting with the MSD, all the utilities. It's for such a small city, it has all the problems of a big city. Mm-hmm.
What's Westwood? Give me some streets.
Ballas Road, right, it's east of
Conway?
Mercy Medical Center.
Okay.
Yeah, Conway Road is on the sort of the southern perimeter, north of Highway 40, and it goes all the way to the end of St. John's property and goes east a couple miles. But that's where Westwood is. But real quick, we had a temple that closed down, and there's a charitable organization that wanted to buy that temple, and they wanted to operate as a school. But there were zoning ordinance issues because Westwood is a 1 acre minimum use pretty much, other than special use. And so the meetings were very emotional. People were screaming and yelling, and it got quite hairy. And at the end of the day, the board refused to issue them a variance and let them occupy the property because of our zoning restrictions. And I'll never forget, after that hearing, the lawyer for the charity came up to me and said, you're going to have a black eye in this community for the rest of your life because of what you did tonight. And I said, go ahead, buddy. Take your best shot.
Oh, my.
Well, that's the thing. People are scared, back then and now and all the time. It's scared to stand up against an injustice or something that you don't believe in because, of those type of people, threats, or they're scared because, they're going to lose interest in something, or I'm just going to mind my own business. But if we don't have anybody to stand up for anything, you got to be fearless. And when you have high morals and high standards, you can do that fearlessly. You can do that. And and sometimes it's hard. You're walking a gray line. You're not, you're not sure maybe which way, but I mean, that just says a lot. I mean, you have grandkids, right?
Yes.
How many grandkids do you have? 3 grandkids. And how many kids do you have?
3.
Okay. But I mean, that's instilled in them now. They know these stories. They're going to be able to carry that tradition on. Are they all in St. Louis here?
No, I have one in St. Louis and one in Denver and one in New York.
No, you got all directions, huh?
Yes, that's right. It's a tour of the country.
Not one kid each, I presume.
My son in New York has 2 kids, and my daughter here in St. Louis has 1 child.
Okay.
In Denver, we're waiting.
Nice. No pressure.
Right, no pressure.
Fred, I don't want to get in your business too much more, but what, a guy with your career and your longevity and level of success, every time I'm here, you're here. And what inspires you to come into the office every day?
I love working with people. I love helping people out. That's why I wanted to practice law, because I saw in college when I interacted with the lawyers in the campaign how they were helping people. And I just love to help people. I love to solve problems. I think it's a high calling to be able to service people and provide people with services and help them solve their problems. Because when you have somebody come in, they're not coming in because life is going great necessarily all the time. They're coming in because they're down and out. They're coming in because they have a problem. They're coming in because they have nowhere else to turn. And so you got to open up your arms, and you got to turn on your ears. You got to listen. And you got to listen, not just simply listen, but try to have empathy and understand what they're talking about. Try to figure out where there's a way to get a path to better their lives and get them a result.
I've been impressed with my interactions with you over the past several years, and as I listen to this, I'm connecting some dots about some of the attributes that I've recognized in you. But those years, that time you spent in D.C. As a staff member, as a reader, as you said, do you think that was like a skill that was enhanced during that time that you kind of use today?
I'm not really sure. I think all of my life experiences add up to where I am today.
Yeah.
It is hard to pick any one. But clearly I went into the profession because I wanted to work with people and help people. So as I grew and as I became more mature and assumed more responsibilities and had the skill set to get results, it just kept growing hand in hand.
Yeah. And what about, since you've had your thumbprint on this establishment for, half a century, essentially, what do you think? How would you characterize this firm today, or how do you want it to be characterized today?
Well, I want it to be characterized as a business that has the leadership and the right team in place to survive into 5 decades. And I think that's an accomplishment. But in the most important part of any business is the people and the culture about that business. And the culture that we have is to, in my view, the client's always right. You've got to listen to that client, and you have to assume that they're right. They may not be right, and you'll have to figure out and divine where they're off and this or that. But you've got to understand what the other person's saying. And you also have to be result-oriented. Just like I mentioned with respect to the hospital, we had a 3-tier approach. We were in court for the law, we had a court of public opinion, and we were also working with legislators in order to get the law changed. And actually, I didn't finish that story, but what we did was that we had a law introduced in St. Louis County to require a very high standard of particulate matters that were low enough so that it wasn't harmful to health. But in order to get there indirectly, it wasn't stated, you had to get scrubbers. And that's what we wanted. We want scrubbers. Mm-hmm. and that's the same approach we take in the practice of law. It's just not single. It's not just binary. It's a multi-pronged attack with respect to solving the problem. Whether you need to focus on legislation, you need to focus on being in court and beating them on the law, and then you've got to have a story that tells and plays well in the media.
Yeah, and I think that I've noticed a collegiality here among the attorneys, where everyone's sort of willing to jump in and work on a case if you need a different set of eyes on something or you need someone's different experience. Been really impressed with that component of the firm as well.
Yeah, there's a very collegial atmosphere in this law firm.
Yeah.
I think people enjoy it. We give a lot of freedom to everybody. All we ask for is you get the result.
Yeah.
You perform and you give it your all.
This place is kind of crazy. It seems like everyone likes to work in a weird way.
We do, because we all have a common goal. We all like to practice law, and we all been together for a long time. We have new young people, young blood coming in.
Yeah.
And it perpetualizes the firm.
Yeah, and are you working on any projects right now that are interesting that you can share on the air in general?
Well, right now my focus is on several business separations, where a family has turned into a couple families, and at some point in time they have different views of how to run the business, and then how do you resolve that. And sometimes, hopefully, you could resolve it through one-on-one negotiations and discussions outside the court. Every once in a while, that doesn't work, and you've got to go to court. So that's what a lot of my focus is on right now with respect to business separations. And there's always real estate deals going on, and things are always happening.
Yeah, I know you just closed on a hotel transaction, right? Not too long ago.
Yeah, so several properties involved. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. In my almost 50 years of practice law, I've never, ever seen a closing that was so bad and so just bizarre as that closing.
Well, yeah, you do this job long enough, right? You'll just continue to be amazed at the problems that can be developed.
Well, right. On this particular problem, the title company was hacked by cyber crooks, and they froze their accounts. They froze their computers. They froze our money. And so everybody had closed, but the title company couldn't move the money because it was froze. And so we had a lot of decisions. We had a lot of soul searching to make as to what do we do? Do we pull the plug and go home? Do we not? It was a very trying experience.
You got it worked out, sounds like.
We closed it. Yeah. Got our money.
They always close.
Show me the money.
That's right. Well, did you go to trial much?
I don't do court. I've done 2 trials in my life when I was a young lawyer, divorced and mechanics leave. But no, I'm a business lawyer. I stay out of the court as much as possible. And
when you're doing that, when you're not running a firm with 60 attorneys and handling issues as the mayor of Westwood, what other things do you enjoy doing?
Being with my dogs, being with my wife, and being with my kids. But no, my passion is the law, and my passion is the village of Westwood. Those are in my family. But those are my passions in life. And the joke around here is that they're going to have to drag me out screaming, kicking, and yelling to get me out of here, because I have no desire to go anywhere. I mean, I love I love coming into work every day. And I feel sorry for people who talk about it's Friday and happy Friday and this or that, because and Mondays, people are dragged down my Mondays. To me, it's an up day. I get to go to work.
Me too. I'm with you. I mean, it's people say when you do things in moderation, it's good to do that. But the people that are the best at what they do are obsessed. It seems like they're obsessed with what they do and they enjoy it, and they're all in. So kudos to you.
Speaking of obsession, I can't let this end just without a little plug for your son, because you mentioned to me that he has a passion for gourmet cooking, and so just give us a little entertainment. I understand you visited him on New Year's and had quite a feast. So tell me what that entails.
Well, I want to tell you about New Year's, but there's something more important than that. So we went up. He invited me up New Year's. My wife and I went, and he had a bunch of his friends over, like 20 of them, and he had a 12-course meal, and that was just a lot of fun. Yeah. And that was great. But the great story is that their school had a fundraiser. And so they auctioned off a dinner for 10 at my son's house, with my son doing the cooking and providing the entertainment. And I wanted to bid, and I was ready to put it down, but they wouldn't let me. It just didn't fit the mold.
Yeah.
And so they raised over $10,000 to pay to go have dinner at his house.
That tells the story right
and
there.
He's going to do it again. No, they have Matt and his wife, Sarah, they know how to entertain very well.
Wow. Well, what's any of his go-to dishes, or what do you like that he makes?
He makes some great shrimp dishes.
Okay.
There's a lot of the food that is not me. He told me I'm a simpleton when it comes to my taste, which is okay with me.
I think that's a compliment.
Oxtail marmalade, brains,
okay.
All these exotic foods that will never pass my lips.
Well, that's
I can appreciate that.
That's way to a woman's heart too, though.
Yes, that's right.
I'm sure she probably enjoys the fact that does she cook as well?
Yes, yes, a team. Both? It's a team.
Okay. All right, nice. And what does he do for a living? Is he a chef or?
He's an international tax lawyer with one of the major accounting firms, and he travels.
So he had to spice it up with some type of culinary,
Oh yeah, no, he eats well. He travels, and he's traveled around the world, and he's over in the Middle East all the time, and all the foreign countries, and
wow,
and they both travel all over the world.
So he followed in your footsteps.
I think he made his own footsteps.
Yeah, he did. But he's an attorney, and he must have really enjoyed watching. He liked his childhood. He must have liked his upbringing to follow in your footsteps with that occupation.
I hope so. We tried.
Yeah.
There's no manual.
No, there's not.
No manual. We all know that for sure.
Trial and error.
Yeah. Well, Fred, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you better today on this, and hope you had fun. We really enjoyed talking to you, and you're very generous with your time for us today.
Oh, great. Thanks. Stay well. Be great.
Thanks.